On today's show, Alperen Sengun snubbed from the Western Conference All-Star team, plus how Amen Thompson and the role players delivered big time against the Dallas Mavericks. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube, just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Alperen Sengun not receiving an all-star nod this season, how he was absolutely snubbed from the all-star selections. We'll talk about that. We'll get into a breakdown of the Rockets win versus the Mavericks, how Amen Thompson and the Rockets role players all stepped up in a game where Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun really struggled. Also some big moments from KD and Sengun in that one. And then we'll also wind the clock back a little bit and talk about the Rockets win against the Hawks a little bit later on in the show. Going to get to all of that on today's episode. First, I'll let you know that today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. All right, I'm playing catch up a little bit here on the program. I apologize, guys. I was sick the last few days. So we're going in reverse order, and we're going the most topical thing first. So if you're a real sicko and you want to stick around and hear about the Rockets Hawks later in the program, stick around for that. But we'll start with the most topical thing, Alperen Sengun not receiving an all-star nod this season, how big of a snub that is, and the silver lining there. And then we'll talk about the Rockets-Mavs game and kind of work our way backwards chronologically. So let's start with the biggest, most frustrating news from the jump, right, is Alperen Sengun doesn't receive the all-star nod as a Western Conference reserve. The West reserves instead coming in as Anthony Edwards, Jamal Murray, Chet Holmgren, Kevin Durant, his teammate, Devin Booker, Deni Avdija, and LeBron James. Now, starting with, I guess, the obvious bit here is, one, this is disappointing because it feels like, for a bunch of different reasons, there are a couple different names on the, and look, first, I want to start off by saying that Alperen Sengun is not the only snub on this list, right? Like, I think arguably a bigger snub in the Western Conference might have actually even been Kawhi Leonard, because one, the Clippers are hosting All-Star Weekend. Kawhi is putting up all-star numbers, and the Clippers have dug themselves out of the pit that they were in earlier this season. They're in the play-in discussion, right? Like, they are above the Blazers. So it feels pretty egregious that the Clippers didn't get a selection at all between Kawhi and James Harden. But this is not a Clippers podcast. I'm not here to argue on their behalf. I'm here to argue, why did the Rockets not get a secondary selection, especially when you look at the setup, the format, the expected, USA versus world format. I thought Alperen Sengun was going to be a shoo-in for this process. Currently, the world roster, the 8 guys selected to the world roster, include Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Giannis, Wemby, Jokic, and then Jamal Murray, Deni Avdija, and Pascal Siakam. Now, because of the weaker Eastern Conference, right, you have Pascal Siakam gets the selection for a 13-36 Indiana Pacers team that is literally at the bottom of the conference. There's nothing you can really do about that, because it's wacky having USA versus world and still making it East versus West and all that. Like, All-Star Weekend's just a mess. Like, it's silly. But this voting process feels kind of dumb. And it's also, when you look at a couple of the other names that did beat out Alperen Sengun for a spot in the West, it gets even more frustrating. One, you go and look at there's two names that really feel like they shouldn't be ahead of Alperen Sengun on this list, point blank, period. First of which is Chet Holmgren. I like Chet as a player. I really do. I think he's an incredible player. I think he's solid. But you also go to compare the stats between Chet Holmgren and Alperen Sengun for this season. And one of their, like, it's a no-brainer looking at the stats head-to-head, which one is an all-star, which one's not. And I know Chet is in the DPOY conversation, sure, but Chet's averaging 17.8 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists. Cool. Alperen Sengun's averaging 21 a game, 9.2 rebounds, and 6.4 assists on the fourth best team in the Western Conference right now. Genuinely, I feel like the only reason Chet made it over Sengun is because the Thunder needed a second all-star, but J-Dub hasn't played enough games to qualify. So that's going to be my simple assessment there. And it's dumb, but because of how good the Thunder are, right? They deserved having a second all-star. They do. They're the defending champs. They're the best team in the NBA. They deserve having a second all-star, but they couldn't throw J-Dub in there. So they went Chet Holmgren instead. And then the other one that is pretty egregious and is, at the end of the day, more a legacy pick than anything, it's LeBron. LeBron hasn't been an all-star this season. He hasn't. The dude hasn't played serious basketball in a minute. But because it's LeBron, he's going to be a part of the all-star team until he retires. It's disappointing that both of those spots got claimed. I won't argue against Booker or Avdia, who are both having really strong seasons. Edwards and Murray, both really strong seasons. Those are all fair picks, in my opinion. Sure. No issue with them. There is optimism, though, and here's the thing, is because of the structure of the USA World format going on, and because Giannis is injured, there is still a pretty strong chance that Alperen Sengun makes it onto the All-Star team as a injury reserve replacement, essentially in place of Giannis, for the NBA to be able to keep their USA versus world format intact. They would need another international all-star to replace Giannis. And it feels like Sengun is at the top of that pecking order. So that's at least something to be aware of and pay attention to. And I'm sure we'll get the announcement for that in the not so distant future. Still frustrating that Sengun had to make it in as an all-star replacement. But it also kind of speaks to, right, there's been a bit of a drop off in his plays from the first 20, 25 games or so. And granted, he's playing injured, he's playing hurt, he's not at 100% right now, and he's trying to do that for the betterment of the team. So I understand all that, but that's just the reality of how his numbers have dipped compared to where they were earlier in the season to where they are now, right? His numbers have dropped a little bit. And if they were more, popping off the page the way that they were for the first 25 or so games pre-injury, then I think he would have been a shoe-in regardless of the status of the other players on the roster. So there's that to consider. It feels like a consolation prize, if anything, if Sengun gets the replacement nod for Giannis. But you take it, right? It is what it is. And the silver lining in all of this, as frustrating as the snub feels, the silver lining in all of this is that Sengun is clearly playing through something right now, potentially through multiple things. We don't really, we know about the ankle, but I think this presents the silver lining here is that it gives Alperen Sengun an opportunity to just rest for a straight, 2 week and a half, 2 straight weeks, whatever it is, going into the All-Star break. You get the time off, and then ideally coming back and then putting the entire league on notice for why he should have been an outright all-star selection, right? And hopefully Sengun is able to come back post all-star break healthy, having that time to heal up with his body and everything, and then just dominating for the closing stretch of the season. I think the all-star break has a chance to be really important for this Rockets team, both for Kevin Durant, for Alperen Sengun, for the immense responsibility that they both carry for this Rockets team, and to be able to come back strong, for this kind of marathon push to the end of the season and into whatever the postseason looks like for the Rockets. So I think there's at least a silver lining there. And I will say, it's about damn time for them to expand the all-star teams. I mean, the fact that it's still just 12 players per conference, 24 all-stars total, feels ridiculous in a league that is as talented as it's ever been. You know, if you expanded the rosters, both sides, right? If you expanded the rosters both ways, to 15 players in each conference, and it would eliminate a lot of the, I guess, the supposed snubs that we're talking about here, right? Because if you did a standard 15-man roster, then you could include Sengun, you could include Kawhi, and you could include James Harden and or Dylan Brooks, right, from the Western Conference. And then in the East, you could have Embiid and Ingram and whoever else you want to include that feels like they got snubbed in the Eastern Conference, right? And at least things would feel a little bit more balanced, and you'd feel a little bit less upset about how compact and tight the rosters are. Maybe it has to do with a minutes thing. Maybe it has to do with, I don't know what it is, but Sengun was snubbed. Hopefully he takes it as fuel and responds accordingly. And the silver lining being that he'll get some time to rest up and be fully healthy for the final 1/3 marathon stretch of this Rockets season. So with that, coming up, I do want to talk about the Rockets' win against the Dallas Mavericks, getting by the skin of their teeth, but Amen Thompson and the role players delivered on a night where Alperen Sengun and Kevin Durant just didn't have it for most of the game. We'll talk about that. We'll get into more things coming up here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And this week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. It should be CJ Stroud for just one passing yard for the max discount to win. I'm just saying. Add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Prize Picks is super simple to use. It takes no time to get started. The whole format is clean and easy to understand. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections. It makes watching games even more fun because every drive, every snap, every stat matters. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. The NBA trade deadline is basically here, and we want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready. If you need a group chat to keep up with the chaos, join ours. The Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Rockets fans, plus national chats where you can hang out with fans from across the league. You also get ad-free versions of the show. And if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use code DEADLINE, all caps, deadline, to get your first month free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. And we do have a part 1, part 2, back-to-back set of episodes coming out right around the corner, a trade deadline preview with Ben Dubose and Brandon Scott. So be on the lookout for that coming out soon this week. Should be out Tuesday midday-ish. So be on the lookout for that. We got into all the little nooks and crannies about what to expect this trade deadline, what the Rockets could do, what they might do, what they shouldn't do, the Giannis rumors. We tackled a lot of stuff. So be on the lookout for that show. Part 1, part 2 dropping. First part Tuesday afternoon, second part TBD. But let's go ahead and look. And again, I apologize, guys, for being sick, but I'm playing catch up here. So we're working through what the Rockets have been up to. And let's go to their most recent win against the Dallas Mavericks. Final score 111-107 in a game where KD and Sengun just did not have it in this game. And look, sometimes that happens. And the big takeaway here, because we're doing this in one segment, right? Not a full game recap, not a full 30-minute pod, not reacting to every little thing that happens in the game. But the takeaway from this one is that it is at least marginally encouraging. Marginally encouraging, not incurring. Wow, can't talk. It's somewhat encouraging seeing a game in which both the Rockets stars just flat out struggled, and yet the role players were able to lift them up. It wasn't a pretty win, but a win is a win. And the Rockets are now improved to 17-4 at home, the best home record in the entire NBA. That counts for something, right? The Rockets have shown that they are a very, very tough team to beat at home. They probably should have beaten the Spurs last week too, if we're keeping it a buck. So looking at how dominant the Rockets have been at home, right? That's at least somewhat encouraging, and it lends itself to the idea that genuinely, I mean, this team should be pushing as hard as possible for the best seeding that they can get, because clearly they are a different team playing at home than they are on the road. I think it's something about the young players too, like their confidence level, their approach to the game, how well they play. It all just swings so drastically when the Rockets are at home versus on the road. I'll probably in the future do a show talking about the Rockets home versus road splits for a lot of the different role players. I know for a fact off the dome that Jabari's home versus road splits have got to be pretty drastic because he plays like a completely different player at home. And it really felt like Amen Thompson, Jabari, Tari, Josh Okogie was awesome in this game. All the role players really stepped up in a big way in a game where Kevin Durant just 13 points on 6 of 17 shooting. He did have 8 assists and only 1 turnover. So KD was facilitating at a high level. So you appreciate that from KD, that he still finds ways to impact the game even when he's struggling. Because it's Kevin Durant, right? And his gravity will always be there, even in a game where Kevin could go 0 for 20 and teams are still going to guard him like he's Kevin Durant. So it was good to see Kevin find a way to still make an impact despite struggling to score the basketball. And he still had he had a 2-pointer kind of late in the game that was much needed, that little like midi pull up. Alperen Sengun in this one, just 14 points on 6 of 20 shooting, although he had the big bucket, the one that broke the tie late in this game with under a minute to go, right, giving the Rockets the lead. So that was a really big possession there in a moment where you didn't know who they were going to turn to, right, in a game where both stars were struggling. You had the role players on, but do you go to Amen Thompson in that moment, or do you trust one of your stars that they're able to deliver even though they've had off games, right? And so for Alperen Sengun to show up and hit that big shot at the end when it mattered most, but also outside of him hitting the big shot, right? 14 rebounds, 7 assists, still finding other ways to impact the game despite not being able to put the ball in the bucket, right? So if you even got halfway normal productions from Kevin Durant and Sengun in this game, we're talking about a 15-point Rockets blowout win instead of scraping by with a 4-point dub against the Mavericks. But this is what good teams do. Good teams have role players who step up. Jabari Smith Jr. stepped up, 19 points, 7 of 13 shooting, 3 of 5 from downtown. Amen Thompson leading the way, plus 15 on the night, best plus minus on the team, 21 points, 7 of 15 shooting, was 7 of 9 at the free throw line. It's great seeing him. Again, he's been adding that to his game, getting downhill, attacking, drawing fouls, getting to the free throw line consistently. That's been a consistent part of his game for a while now. And then the facilitating continues to really impress. He had a bunch of really great spray outs to shooters in this game. He's getting more and more comfortable with that drive and kick part of his game, recognizing where shooters are and getting them the ball in the spots where they can be successful and knock down shots. 9 assists to 0 turnovers, flirting with a triple-double in this win for Amen Thompson. 21, 8, and 9. Great game from him. Josh Okogie, 13 points, 5 of 11 shooting, 3 of 6 from downtown. He's shooting 39% on the season. I really did think that Josh Okogie's 3-ball was going to actively regress after his incredibly hot start to the season, but he's kept it up. And Josh Okogie has been by far, like pound for pound, I think if you were to do like an all NBA team of pound for pound signings, like from this past offseason, new player, new team, all that stuff, I think Josh Okogie has to be like all NBA first team on best off-season signings for what he has contributed to this Rockets team, for the role that they expected him to play and the role that he actually has wound up playing. He has been so invaluable to this Rockets team. And he is definitely a piece that should be in any trade discussions, any hypotheticals you want to mock up going into the deadline. Josh Okogie should be untouchable for what he actually gives this Rockets team on a nightly basis. The energy, the defense, the shooting, all of it, the defensive versatility. You know, I've had my gripes about how Ime has utilized Okogie versus Reed and like how he's balanced some of the rotations at times, but Okogie has been awesome for this Rockets team. Clint Capela with some solid minutes, just across the board, solid minutes for everybody in this Rockets win. And the fact that Tari Eason continues to shoot lights out from three has been so impressive. Second best three-point shooter in the entire NBA this season, and the number one corner three-point shooter in the NBA this season. Really impressive stuff from Tari Eason and from the whole team, right? To grit through, get this win. Also, it is just patently unfair that the Rockets have to deal with Victor Wembanyama and Cooper Flagg for the next like 10 to 15 years in this division. Like, my goodness. Cooper Flagg is going to be so good. 34 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 13 of 25 shooting. The dude is unbelievable. I hate it. I hate that the Mavericks did the most despicable thing ever by trading Luka. Nico Harrison, sleeper cell, whatever you want, whatever it was, right? And then to be gifted the redo of the century. Or again, not usually a conspiracy theorist, but I fully believe in the conspiracy theory that like Adam Silver was like, all right, send Luka to LA. We need a star in LA. LeBron's getting old, and we'll gift you guys Cooper Flagg, right? Like lottery rigging, all that stuff. Like this might have been the nail in the coffin for me about the NBA rigging the lottery. There's no way that a team is that lucky to have one of the most disastrous, like the worst trade in North American sports in history. And then to recoup a young star like Cooper Flagg months later. Miss me with that. Sign me up. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on that one. But I want your thoughts on the Rockets win against the Mavericks, 111-107. What stood out to you about the win? Give me your thoughts also it was Amen Thompson's interview after the game that I don't know what you said, but thanks was so endearing and so incredibly on brand for who Amen Thompson is as a person, his personality, all of that. It was just chef's kiss. I wanted to pull it to put it on the soundboard, and it's just the audio is so garbled because of the loud noises going on. It wouldn't make a good audio drop, but it was so funny watching that moment between him and was it Lisa Salters? I'm not 100% sure which reporter it was on the sideline, but anyways, it was hilarious and fantastic. Give me your thoughts on the Rockets win against the Mavericks. Coming up, we're going to share final thoughts from today's show, talk a little bit about the Rockets-Hawks game from late last week, as I'm still playing catch-up here, so the real sickos stick around. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Pulling up the Game Time app, picking an upcoming game, and buying tickets takes just minutes. You can see the all-in price up front. That's my favorite part about using Game Time. Full price transparency. The price you see is the price you're going to pay all throughout the process. No surprise fees at checkout. I love that. They've got great zone deals, last-minute ticket deals, all sorts of stuff to take advantage of. So take the guesswork out of buying your NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. It can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on yourself, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some of the pressure off of yourself. It's easy to assume everyone has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something. Therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing relationships down. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the US, and they do the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do that at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, BETTERHAELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's talk about the Rockets' 104-86 win against the Atlanta Hawks. A game that, I'll tell you what, if you could talk about forgettable first halves. I was writing really sarcastic notes for the first half of this game. I just want, peek behind the curtain. I wrote, all caps, Jabari Smith Jr. step back threes and Jae'Sean Tate post up hook shots. Hell yeah. And I wrote 3 non-shooters. Don't you worry. I was really not feeling it after how frustrating the loss was the night before against the San Antonio Spurs and watching Ime Udoka get just manhandled by Mitch Johnson in the coaching department. I was up to about here with Ime watching this game, and the first half of the Hawks game did nothing to, quell my frustrations. And here's the kicker, is there was a sequence where the Rockets were running the whole, hey, we're going to park our big on your non-shooter, right? Because Dyson Daniels is shooting something like 12%, 19% ridiculous from three this year. He's awful. He's an incredible player, but his weakness is it's like looking in a mirror between him and Amen Thompson as far as their Achilles heel, their weakness as players, right? And so the Rockets parked Sengun on Dyson Daniels, and you know what they did? They used Corey Kispert. They used Dyson Daniels as a screener, and they had Corey Kispert coming off screens, and on back-to-back possessions at one point in the first half, I think it was early, I think it was in the first quarter, it might have been, Corey Kispert was destroying the whole, hey, we're going to park the center on your non-shooter. And I was watching it and I was like, Ime, please take notes. Are you taking notes, man? Because that's what you could have done against Wemby and the Spurs, right? Have Amen Thompson come set a screen for Kevin Durant and have KD just, catch off the DHO and just pull up from the perimeter. I don't know. I was kind of losing it on that one. Another game where Josh Okogie's hustle was really evident. And frankly, this was just another Kevin Durant drags the Rockets to a win. It was a very, very forgettable first half between these two teams. Rockets led by 1 point going into halftime, and both teams played some pretty miserable basketball in the first 24 minutes. And then the Rockets, really Kevin Durant and Jabari Smith Jr. to a lesser degree, kind of woke up in the third quarter. KD for the game in this one, 31 points, 12 of 22 shooting, to go with 5 rebounds, 4 assists, had a few turnovers, but 31 points leading the way and just doing what Kevin Durant does. At one point, took an elbow from Vit Krejci and took some exception to it because Vit was wasn't ruled a flagrant or anything, but just, I don't know, playing with your elbows like that is kind of dangerous, and it probably should have been ruled the inconsistency with what's a flagrant and what's not a flagrant is pretty frustrating in today's NBA. So I get that. But that third quarter, Rockets woke up. Kevin Durant in particular did a lot of his damage in that third quarter. Half of his points, basically 16 points of his 31, scored in that third frame on 6 of 9 shooting. Nice. And Jabari Smith Jr., 8 of his 14 points in that third quarter to help kind of propel the Rockets out ahead. And at that point, once they got that solid buffer, and they were able to kind of build and extend that lead out, that from that point, they were able to just kind of coast to the finish line, right? They had a pretty sizable lead by the end of 3, a comfortable double-digit lead, and then that lead eventually balloons out to, they're floating around 20 plus through the rest of the game. And then you kind of coast to the finish line against a Hawks team that has been injured, struggling, all that good stuff. This is not really a game to have much to write home about. The things that stood out in this one were, in particular, Kevin Durant dragging the Rockets to another win. And unfortunately, another game where Alperen Sengun struggled, still tried to find a way to make an impact with the 13 rebounds. But the finishing for Alp, man, like his finishing has just fallen off a cliff once again. And this was something that again, I'm hopeful that this has more to do with the injury than it does anything with just his touch or whatever. But was so optimistic about his finishing taking a turn for the better to start this season. And it certainly looked like it did those first 20, 25 games or so. And then just since then, right, it's like his touch has just disappeared. And weirdly enough, somebody pointed this out to me the other day, and I'm curious why. He's completely abandoned the push shot. Like, the push shot was such a big part of his game for the first few seasons that he was in the NBA. And now he's just completely gone away from it. And I know he's got like the Dirk fade, the flamingo, and he's got the high arcing, followays, and like his touch is good on some of those moves. But I just wonder where the push shot went, because it really felt like it was kind of a staple part of his game. Maybe it has something to do with him not running nearly as much pick and roll this season because he's not being spoon fed those opportunities from Fred. But I don't know, like getting a deeper role from Sengun, receiving a pass, on the pick and roll, and then being able to go straight into that floater or that push shot was such a big part of his game. And it's just gone this year. No idea where it went. Hopefully something I can ask him about somewhere down the line later this season when I get a chance to talk to him next. But anyways, I want your thoughts from this Rockets-Hawks game. What stood out to you about this one? Any trends that you noticed? Anything that you saw coaching-wise that maybe frustrated you in the aftermath of the Rockets' loss to the Spurs? I'm curious your thoughts on this one. And give me your thoughts on everything. Alperen Sengun's All-Star snub, the Rockets win against the Mavericks. Again, my apologies for being under the weather, playing catch up a little bit here on these games. But we are back on track now, and we'll have the NBA trade deadline, the Rockets NBA trade deadline preview coming your way soon. We'll also have a recap after the Monday night game against the Pacers, all that good stuff. Loaded slate this week. Be on the lookout for our weekly game previews. Pacers, Celtics, the first setup, and then we'll have the next set teed up after that for the Hornets and the Thunder. Oh, another meetup with the Thunder. Should be a good one later this week. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.